My name is Jeff Kischuk. I work for Total Compensation Systems, and we are a firm that specializes in health actuarial consulting for California public agencies. Over the last 25 years, we've done one or more OPEB valuations for now more than 500 California public agencies.
Jeff, that's a bundle of experience, and I wonder if we could, in our conversation, start off just by asking you to give an estimate of what the present value is of an average benefit. Let's say this is medical coverage for life for a typical non-safety annuitant in California who's going to retire at age 60. What would be the present value, if you could go out on the market and buy that, of that benefit?
Well, of course, it would be great if you could go out on the market and buy an insurance policy to insure it. But of course, part of the problem is those types of products aren't available. For, say, a 60-year-old retiring today for lifetime benefits, you're looking at a present value of about $200,000. One of the interesting things about it is that if somebody's age 55 and they're retiring, the present value is $260,000. So one of the interesting things about OPEB benefits is that the younger you are, the larger the benefit you receive when you retire.
So a safety individual retiring at age 50 or 52 or 53, it would be substantially more than that.
Absolutely.
Jeff, one of the things that I've been concerned about is the lack of pre-funding in California of OPEB benefits. And it seemed to me strange that we pre-funded pension benefits, but most agencies never did consider pre-funding OPEB benefits. Do you have some historical explanation for that?
Well, I think the biggest reason is that when retiree health benefits were first offered, the cost of health benefits was very, very low. And so this really, truly was a fringe benefit at that time. Compared, for example, to pension benefits, which were a much greater expense. But in the last 40 years, several things have happened. First of all, as I think is pretty well known, the cost of health benefits have risen much faster than inflation. And so what used to be a relatively inexpensive benefit has become a very expensive benefit. Second, life expectancies continue to increase. So the number of years that you're paying the benefit is much longer, much greater than it was when these benefits were first established. A third issue has to do with the fact that as time has gone on, Medicare has covered less and less of the cost of benefits for people who are 65 and older. And that being the case, the Medicare supplement plans have to cover more and more of the cost. This is particularly true of prescription drug benefits, where you've seen the cost of these prescription drug benefits just explode in the last few years. And of course, prescription drug benefits have not historically been covered by Medicare. They are now covered by Part D, but that's an additional cost. So you take all those three things together, in something that used to be a very inexpensive benefit, a fringe benefit, now for some retirees ends up having a greater value than their pension benefit. That being the case, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, decided that they really did need to do something to make sure that these benefits are accounted for properly. And a few years ago, they implemented Accounting Standard 45, GASB 45, to require public employers to book the expense for health benefits in the same way that they do pension. Now the question is, since these are going to be required to be accounted for in the same way as pension, are they now going to be funded in the same way as pension? And we're seeing more and more pre-funding as each year passes.
Jeff, while you're on this issue of pre-funding, is it your recommendation that that OPEB benefits should be pre-funded?
I mean, generally speaking, actuaries like accountants are neutral on the issue of pre-funding in the sense that we don't really advocate pre-funding or not pre-funding. our responsibility is to calculate the numbers, and GASB 45 provides that the numbers are calculated differently depending on whether there is pre-funding or not. I mean, what I can say as an actuary is that if you pre-fund, GASB 43 and GASB 45 provide some advantages to pre-funding that will ultimately reduce the cost, the long-term cost of retiree health benefits, and make the cost a lot more stable.
Well, Jeff, if pre-funding is so difficult, or transitioning to pre-funding is difficult, what's wrong with just doing pay-as-you-go? Are there some dangers with that approach?
Well, I think there's several issues that come up, and there have been news stories about some of these lately. For example, there are a lot of state pension plans that are substantially underfunded, and there's an effort right now going on to try and allow the states to get out from under their pension obligation due to that lack of funding or the underfunding. So the greater the level of funding, the more secure the benefits are. I think it's very difficult for people to challenge or to try and reduce or eliminate benefits when a benefit's being funded. And so I think that's a really important point. There are other issues as well, though. I think it's pretty well known that Social Security down the road, if we don't change it, is in a bit of trouble because the number of people working relative to the number of people receiving benefits keeps going down, and it gets tougher and tougher. You can have the same phenomenon for a public agency where, say, a school district in declining enrollment has a decreasing number of employees. Well, as you have a larger number of retirees to pay for, it's essentially a smaller number of employees that's bearing the cost of that because the revenue is lower. So I think it's helpful to have generational equity where each generation of employees pays for their own benefit while they're working, and that requires pre-funding.
Jeff, you specialize in OPEB actuarial valuations. What are the major differences between OPEB actuarial valuations and pension valuations?
Of course, there are a lot of similarities, which is, I think, why you asked the question. GASB explicitly, when they put together GASB 45, modeled it structurally on GASB 25 and 27, which are the pension standards. So in a structural way, in a conceptual way, they're very similar. But there are really two main important differences, I think. The first difference is that health plans tend to be changed frequently. A health plan can be changed to keep the benefit, the deductibles and coinsurance levels and inside limits kind of reasonable over time. And because the benefit plan has changed, you have a kind of a moving target. And GASB decided to handle that by creating something they call a substantive plan or a substantive plan that has to do with, over time, how does the benefit plan sort of adjust to reflect what's happening with inflation and things. And so that's a concept that really doesn't exist in the pension world too much. The reason that's important is because the valuation has to be done based on that substantive plan, not necessarily what the collective bargaining agreement says. And so it's a difficult concept for people to understand, but it's an important one. And it's an important question to ask an actuary when you're valuing this. How does this substantive plan differ, if at all, from what's in the collective bargaining agreement? A second thing that's very different is that pension benefits are based on salary, and salary is something that's negotiable. But health benefits are based on the premium cost. Premium cost is something the employer and the employees don't really have any control over directly. And so that trend rate, the rate at which healthcare premiums increase, becomes a very important component of the valuation, and it's much more difficult to deal with than anything that you would find in a pension valuation. But identifying what that assumption is and understanding the impact of it is something that's important for all parties in the collective bargaining process.